Mimer. Have Rahmanas on the trees, and I'm not going to start making more copies. Okay, word nice tests. It's Kuf Pei Vav. That's what you look like when you have too much to drink, Asian. Look in there. See that? That's what you look like. You see, Coleman? That's what you look like. I don't know. It does it every now. Remember, I used to complain about it. So here, we'll try again. You press this. Now you guys are normal. You see that? Okay. Now press it again, and I should also be normal. Oh, I'm normal. I mean, I don't know. That's a sort of a loaded statement, but you know what I mean. Okay. It's nice to be back after our 2-day hiatus. Okay, the last thing we learned, and it's really quite astounding, the Rebbe in Ois Ches completely changed the whole direction of the Maimer by telling us that distinction that we made between Milchama, the war on one hand, and Sholom and peace on the other, that exists, but ultimately, quoting Chazal, Milchama is chalta the Geula, Milchama is the beginning of the Geula. The war is the beginning of the peace. The war is the beginning of the redemption. And how did the Rebbe explain? Now that can obviously be explained in real politic, but how did the Rebbe, and which is what Chazal are talking about, but in that Gemara, but what in Avodah, in our Maimer, how does that express itself? That every single level of your Avodah, even that which might be difficult to express and might be involved in a certain level of milchama, of battling through things, the true source of that is Etzem and Neshama, is the essence of your soul, where there is no bad. Right? Yeah, that's the Rebbe told us. Yechidah shebenefesh. What's unique about Yechidah shebenefesh? Regardless, it's true. Tzvi was definitely right. The Rebbe does talk about Yechidah shebenefesh of the Nefesh Bahamis. But ultimately, Yechidah shebenefesh is the 5th level of the soul, and there is no opposition to that level of the soul. In other words, if that level of you is revealed, there's no opposition from your Nefesh Bahamis to that level of you. That's the level of you that is completely and totally essentially connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and doesn't experience any other state of reality. Every other state of you, even the loftiest states of your neshama, Chaya shebenefesh, will have an opposing force in the Nefesh Bahamis. Just like, generally, what power of the soul do we attribute to Chaya shebenefesh? We've talked about it, so I can ask you. Right? Amnon's not here. Well, actually, he's sort of here. I mean, he's left marks of his existence.
Ghost about it.
Whether, we'll see what happens to him. He's right now up there in Yechidah shebenefesh, so we can't see him. That's what's happening. It's a little bit down in Gilui in Revelation. What aspect, what power of the soul? It's a superconscious power of the soul and is sourced in Chaya shebenefesh. Okay, we've gone through this. I didn't write it on a board because there's not much of a board here. Right, but I counted on everybody writing it down on the notebooks with the pens that they come to class with, because not everybody has a photographic memory. Some people do. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, the 3 levels of the soul that are clothed in the body. What's Nefesh relevant to? What's Ruach relative to? What's neshama relative to? What power of the soul? What aspect of you is powered by what we call neshama? How does it express itself in your conscious reality? It's called seichel, intellect. Ruach, that aspect of the soul, the 3 levels of the soul clothed in the body. I don't see a pen anyway. Oh, there's a pen. I guess I have to be careful with the coffee on my mustache. a real blackboard or whiteboard or whatever in this room. Okay, from the bottom up, nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, is yechida. Okay, in this mimer we've been talking about yechida. What word in English would you put next to yechida relative to your soul?
Essence.
Essence. Okay. That's what you put. Okay, start from the bottom now. Nefesh, action. Ruach, speech and emotion. Neshama, intellect. Chaya, generally, ratzon, will. Okay? Those are the 5 levels of the soul and how they express themselves. These 3 levels of the soul are clothed in your body and are responsible for your conscious activity. Now, everything that aspect of your soul does, in terms of your conscious activity, is filtered through something called the nefesh habahamis, the animal soul. Because conscious you is your animal soul. The experience you have of you comes from an animal soul, not from a godly soul. Your true existence is your godly soul. Your animal soul is only here to power you while you're down here in the world doing whatever you're doing down here in the physical world. When someone leaves the physical world, so their animal soul is no longer of any use, and so hangs out by their gravesite. Right? Where's their neshama go? To Gan Eden. Okay. So the essence of the soul, the Rebbe said, that aspect. Now, in your nefesh habahamis, those first 4 levels, there's a corollary in the nefesh habahamis. There's action of the nefesh habahamis. There's emotion of the nefesh habahamis. There's intellect of the nefesh habahamis. There's also will of the nefesh habahamis. Right? Every time you have a desire to do something that's not in line with God's will, where's that coming from? Your nefesh habahamis. It doesn't have to be something terrible and horrible and disgusting. It's just anything that isn't anything you do that is focused on, I want to do this right now because I want to give myself what I want, right? Whatever that is, has no connection whatsoever to the ultimate purpose of your being down here to reveal godliness. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing to do, right? It's just, I want to go sit in the park and read a book. Okay, why am I going to sit in the park and read the book? So I could go to sit in the park and read the book because I need an hour to chill so that I'll be able to learn better and accomplish what I really have to accomplish in life better, because I just need an hour to chill. Okay, fine. We go to sleep at night, right? So sometimes we like to be asleep when we're awake. Right? Okay. So you're going to be asleep while you're awake. Fine. That's coming from the nefesh habahamis, but it's not in any way, shape, or form contrary to the purpose of you're doing it in order to fulfill your purpose better, right? You want to learn better, but you realize you're not focused right now. You're going to go for a walk for an hour to sort of clear your head, and you'll come back and you'll accomplish more. That's great. That's amazing. We all do that. Everybody needs that. I mean, almost everybody, right? There are people who don't, but most of us do. Okay. But what about those moments where, say, I'm going to the park because I just want to get into me and I want to forget about everything to do with anything else other than me? Okay, so that's nefesh habahamis mamish. That's where that's coming from. Is there such a will? Yeah, such a will. The previous will could be coming from the nefesh elokis through the nefesh habahamis. The nefesh elokis wants to serve God, realizes that it's stuck in a body with a nefesh habahamis that gets distracted, and thinks that probably the best way to deal with this is to go for a walk for an hour. Okay. Now, the nefesh elokis walking, it doesn't have legs, right? But, okay. But it'll go for a walk for an hour. So, what the best way, you're sitting and learning at 9:30 at night and you can't concentrate, your nefesh elokis can say, you know what? I want to be able to concentrate on what I'm learning, and if I keep sitting here, I'm just going to waste my time. If I go to sleep now, I'll actually accomplish more tomorrow, so he gets in bed. Right? And cuts half an hour off the Seder that he was going to have at night. He was going to learn till 10, but he's not accomplishing anything anyway. And so the person makes the decision, I'm going to go to sleep now. Where might that decision be coming? Who knows? You can't stick a pin in someone to know. But where might that be coming from? Nefesh elokis. Godly soul. Wants to accomplish more and realizes can't accomplish it now because it's too tired, too distracted, just can't get it together. So I'll go to sleep and I'll accomplish more tomorrow. right? Why is he doing that? He wants to accomplish more in his life relative to why God put him here. Okay, so it might be the best thing to do right now is to turn the light off. Go to sleep, right? It's an amazing sikh of the Rebbe why it is that the Eibishter created the world that we have to waste a good chunk of our life sleeping. I mean, if you figure that, let's say the average is, I don't imagine this is 6 hours. Let's say 6 hours. They say 8, but I can't imagine most people sleep 8 hours. 6 hours, babies do, right? Children do, but I mean, most adults don't get 6 hours of sleep, 8 hours of sleep a night. But let's say the average is 6 hours of sleep a night, just to pick a number. Okay, so there's 8 billion people in the world. So that's 48 billion man hours that are wasted on sleep every single day. Imagine what could be accomplished in 48 billion hours. Now, a lot of the people are accomplishing things that we're very glad that they sleep, and they should sleep more because what they do when they're awake is such a disaster that we'd rather they were asleep all the time. But there's all sorts of other people who are doing good stuff all day, right? And 48 billion people hours, I don't want to get beat up here, people hours, 48 billion people hours of activity are wasted on sleep every day. Whoa, that's a lot of time. Right? We could finish at least 2 Maimarim in that time. Right? Okay. So the Rebbe asks the question, why? There's a sikh of the Rebbe talks about why? I remember what the sikh is. Right? So don't ask and embarrass me. So and the Rebbe says an amazing thing. Imagine if we didn't sleep. Then every single mistake that we ever made in our lives would still be part of today. Wow, that would be heavy. What does sleep allow us to do? Some days work better. Some days you don't accomplish exactly what you would like to have accomplished. Not that you didn't try it, just some things just weren't going. They weren't working, whatever. Okay, what do you do to that day? No sleep. Wake up the next morning. I'm starting again, afresh, brand new, starting all over. Imagine if we could never, ever start all over. How hard it would be. Right? Whoa. Now, why so much sleep? I don't know. That's a separate question. But the idea of sleep, separating today from tomorrow, or today from yesterday, really is how we experience it. Amazing. Then you wake up in the morning, you say Meidani, and the last 2 words you say in Meidani are Rabbi Amunasecha. Great is your belief. What belief? Who's you and what belief? You say it every day, right? You should know what you're saying, my goodness.
What?
You're
going to get your soul back.
No, I got my soul back. I'm awake. B'diuk. You're talking to God. Meida ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayim. Thank you, God, King. Right? That's what we're talking to Him. Right? And that you return my soul in dearness. Rabba emunasecha. Great is your emunah. Who's you? God. Emunah in what? Me. And how do we know God has such emunah in us, faith in us? Well, He's giving us another day of life. He's decided it's not worth turning off our lights because we're hopefully going to accomplish something of worth in the next day, today. So no matter how yesterday might have been a day where, for whatever reason, and it's not always our fault, so to speak. It's not a matter of fault. Fault is irrelevant. What matters is did we get it done or didn't we get it done? So sometimes we don't get done what it is that could have been done. And it can be frustrating. Okay, say there, go to sleep, wake up the next morning. The Eibishter has absolute belief in you because you woke up. And start again. Right? Why so much sleep? I don't know. Right? I mean, the Chofetz Chaim was a very, very famous man, very amazing man. He used to diminish his sleep in very small increments over time. And he got to a point, he'd take a couple of minutes off his sleep every now and then, and he got down to a point where he was only sleeping like 2 hours a night. He'd worked on it very gradually. And he got down to about 2 hours a night. So he tells a story. He said that one morning he woke up after 2 hours, and he said, my Yetzer Hara told me that, what are you doing? Why are you getting up? You're an old man, and you're tired. You should go back to sleep. So I said to him, you're older than me, and you're up. So he got up. My Yetzer Hara is wide awake. When the alarm goes, my Yetzer Hara beat the alarm every morning. No, don't listen to that. Snooze. Hit the snooze. Reuven Dunan was a heavy guy. He always said the truth in a very, very unsubtle way. So, but he was a very special person, and he was makar more people to Yiddishkeit in this country than Kimat any Lubavitcher in his time. He was unbelievable, but he was gruff. He was a tractor driver, literally. He was a tractor driver. Wore a yellow helmet all day. But he once said when the snooze button came into being. So he said, "What's the snooze button?" Now, don't feel bad because most of us hit the snooze button because most of us in all fairness set the alarm a few minutes before we have to actually get up so we can do it gradually, right? That's why, okay? So, but what did he say the snooze button is? And there's truth to this, and the truth hurts sometimes, is the alarm rings. He says the alarm rings. The person says, God, I'm not really interested. I'll see you again in 7 minutes. Whoa. That's heavy. That basically is what it is. Now, okay, I need my sleep, so you understand why we do what we do. We might hit it, 5 minute snooze, a 7 minute snooze, a 6 minute, 42 second snooze, whatever it is. Yechidish b'nefesh is that level of the soul that does not have any opposition in the nefesh habahamis. Nefesh habahamis has ratzon. We just discussed it. The ratzon to go sit in the park because I want to, and it has nothing to do with God. Nothing. It has to do with me, my relation with myself, and all I care about right now is myself. Not that terrible, horrible, disgusting person. Just right now, that's where I am. Okay, that's coming from the nefesh habahamis neto. Right? Doesn't have to be an aveira. It's just a complete and total focus on self. Hopefully momentary. Right? If the nefesh elokis, if the godly soul thinks that I need that 5 minute break, so the godly soul will get my animal soul, conscious me, to take a 5 minute break. Everything happens through the animal soul. Everything. Every conscious activity you do happens through your animal soul. Because your animal soul is that person you refer to as me and I. That's where that comes from, that experience. Okay. There's a level of your godly soul that has no opposition whatsoever, and when that's revealed, there is nothing but godliness in your life. And that's Yechidish b'nefesh. And the Rebbe told us an amazing thing before we took our little break, which was unintended, that every single positive act that you do in your life is coming from that place. It's Mesiras Nefesh Mamish. It's self-sacrifice. You're giving up yourself in order to express God. You're moving yourself aside, and there's a piece of you that is completely and totally, essentially connected to God that's expressing itself through your conscious being. Wow. That's every mitzvah we do. Right? And the mashal the Rebbe brought for that was a soldier. Okay. Ois tes. We're still trying to figure out Poda besholom, right? We're getting to the point where we're trying to. Are you the weatherman here, Kalman?
I put it on it.
It just keeps turning on. Okay. Al pia now, based on what we said earlier, yesh levar gam. We can also explain had the isa be Yerushalmi, that which it explains in the Gemara Yerushalmi, Talmud Yerushalmi. Al pasuk Poda besholom nafshi. Regarding this pasuk, now David HaMelech wrote this pasuk, right? Which is really interesting, because David HaMelech's life was about war, not peace. Right? Matter of fact, what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu tell David HaMelech he's not allowed to build because his hands are full of blood based on all the wars he fought? Couldn't build the Beis HaMikdash. Who was going to build the Beis HaMikdash? Sure. His son, Shlomo. So now since David HaMelech is talking about Poda besholom, and you and I said the 3 kufot of Poda besholom start with David's son, not David HaMelech. Yet he's the one saying Poda besholom. So now it's becoming a little clearer, because even though David, the revealed reality was milchama, but what was the panemius? What was the inner reality happening? Shalom. Right? Oh, so now let's see how that expresses itself. And the Rebbe quotes an amazing Gemara in the Yerushalmi, right? There's 2 Talmuds, Talmud Bavli, that's what we spend our day learning. Talmud Yerushalmi was codified here in Eretz Yisrael about 150, 200 years before Talmud Bavli. The main author of Talmud Yerushalmi is Rabbi Yochanan, who shows up in Talmud Bavli all the time. So what does it say in the Yerushalmi? Ala pasuk Poda besholom nafshi, our pasuk. Now, it quotes the rest of the pasuk, which we haven't talked about yet. Ki berabim hayu imadi. The many were with me. So David HaMelech says, Poda besholom nafshi mikrav li. There was a Poda besholom to my soul, mikrav, from the battle. Ki barabim hayu imadi, because the multitudes were with me. Now they're with me in the battle, evidently. But so now it's called sholem, even though he's in a battle, which is what we talked about at the very beginning when we started learning the mimer, and we didn't just simple shot in the pasuk. Oh, so what does the Yerushalmi say? It says amazing thing. Who are these rabbim who were with me? The Kayala Anshe of Sholem. These are the people of Avshalom, David HaMelech's son, with whom he was at war. David HaMelech. She's Palu Shlema Shel David. They davened for the peace of David, for the health of David HaMelech. They were part of the army of David HaMelech's son, who was trying to overthrow his father and take over the kingship. This is what David HaMelech is. This is when David HaMelech wrote this Kapitel Tehillim. David HaMelech, why was he writing Tehillim? Why wasn't he at the war? Because his soldiers wouldn't let him go to the front. Because they didn't want him to get killed in the front. And they said, no. He used to lead the troops in the battle. They said, no, you're going to stay here in Yerushalayim and we'll go to war. And they went out to war against Avshalom, his son. Now, if Avshalom had won, what would Avshalom have done to Shlomo HaMelech? Absolutely, for sure. Killed him. Right? Okay. Avshalom's soldiers were davening that David HaMelech should not be killed. Now, it's hard to imagine they're davening for David HaMelech to win the war, because what are they doing? Fighting the war. And whose side are they on? The other side. So they're still fighting the war. Now, I assume, I think it makes sense to all of us that their fighting is not going to be as wholehearted as it might have been if they weren't fighting someone who obviously they loved, right? But they were still fighting for Avshalom. How this all works, I don't know, right? But God was, God does funny things in terms of orchestrating events. Okay, so Avshalom is busy fighting his father, trying to take over the kingship. His men, while they're fighting David HaMelech's men, are davening that David HaMelech should be spared. That's what the Yerushalmi says. That's an incredible thing. Now, but if you think about it in terms of what we've been learning, so that it's starting, there would be a certain sense to that. Even in the Melchama, what's being revealed, the deepest state of truth is being revealed even in the Melchama. And how's that being expressed? The tefillah of the people of Shalom. Now, but what's interesting also is Poda besholom, because what are they doing for David HaMelech? What did we just read? What are they doing for him? Davening. What's davening? Shalom or Milchama? Milchama. Right. The ultimate Poda besholom is brought about by davening? I thought davening was the Milchama, it wasn't the Shalom. Right? Davening is a milchama. Davening is a real battle to get the nefesh habahamis, to tell God that He's wonderful and beautiful and amazing and worthy of our love. That's not easy. Putting on tefillin, relatively easy, right? Relative to davening, we do a better job at putting on the tefillin. The l'cha'ura, at first glance, harimavur li'il. It's explained earlier. The padiyah b'shalom. Right, the redemption that happens in a peaceful way, in a calm way, right? We called it menucha in the earlier part of the mimer. U'b'Torah dafka, specifically through Torah. Right, when you're sitting and learning Torah, you're sitting in your living room or you're sitting in a zal and you're discussing physical reality and you're elevating that physical reality, even though you don't have to confront that physical reality. That physical reality might be about someone making false claims in a court. That might be about two cows battling in a field, and one cow kills the other cow, and you have to figure out who owes who what, right? But whatever state is happening on the page of the Gemara is not happening at your table in Zal or in your living room. So you're elevating that state of reality through discussing it in Torah, and that's called menucha. We learned that throughout the whole Maimon. Davening's the battle. So how can it be? Right? Mashen kein tefillah, the Rebbe says, back to the Maimon, 3 lines down. Mashen kein tefillah. Hi b'derech milchama. Tefillah is the battle. And yet, what do we say? Utfilosam shel anshe Avshalom haisa b'negei lemilchemes Avshalom. And the tefillah of the people of Avshalom was regarding the war of Avshalom. So how is this Poda besholom? There's a war going on. Val derech zeh tzarich lahav, in this way, we also have to understand, and this is something that we brought up earlier, and the Rebbe has been explaining. everything we've been learning in the last two Oisias, Ches and Tes, is all to explain the whole story of Yud Tes Kislev and Yud Kislev. Al derech zeh tzarich lahavin b'akesher shel geula de Yud Tes Kislev, the redemption of the Alter Rebbe from jail on Yud Tes Kislev. And what did he say? He said he was saying that pasuk, Ima pasuk Poda besholom. What's the shalom? There's no shalom. The Rebbe was in jail. They were thinking about, God forbid, killing the Rebbe. He was taken away in the black carriage. No one ever came home with they were taken away in the black carriage by the Tsarist regime. Well, the Rebbe did. Harei geula the Admar Zoken, the redemption of Admar Zoken Haisa was kefisha kesev b'Igeres HaKodesh, as he writes in Igeres HaKodesh, part of Tanya. Right, and he writes it. He says that when I got out of jail, what was I doing? Kishikarisi, the Sefer Tehillim, when I was reading Sefer Tehillim, and he says he was reading the pasuk Poda besholom, so that's when he was told he's free. So that's also interesting, because why is that Poda besholom? He's davening. The inyana shel amidas Tehillim, the whole idea of saying Tehillim. Now the Rebbe says parenthetically, which is interesting, Afal Pisha Sefer Tehillim Michaf Daled Svarim the Tanakh Torah, that even though Sefer Tehillim, the book of Tehillim, is one of the 24 books of Tanakh, which is Torah, Beseder, but when you're saying Tehillim, what are you doing? Davening. A third of the davening you do every morning is Tehillim. More on Shabbos. What do we add? The extra Psukei Zimmer on Shabbos morning makes Psukei Zimmer twice as long as it is during the week. What do we add? Tehillim. One other thing. Aderes v'emunah. Everything else is Tehillim. Everything else we add. Tehillim. We just say more Tehillim. This Shabbos we're going to say more Tehillim. We're going to say the whole book before we start davening. Then we're going to say a bunch of the things we already said when we said all of Tehillim. We're going to say again in davening. Tehillim is davening. Ashrei Yeshrei Beisecha. Where's that from? Tehillim. Okay, so David HaMelech is all about Tehillim. In Tehillim he says Poda besholom. The Alter Rebbe is in jail. The Tsarist Russians put him in jail. They basically want to kill him. Somehow they're convinced miraculously not to. And when he's set free, he says he was saying a pasuk in Tehillim. And the Alter Rebbe said very, very clearly that what it was that helped him so much, the tefillah of the Hasidim. The Rebbe doesn't quote that here. The tefillah of all the people who are davening for the Rebbe. If they wanted the Rebbe to be redeemed in peace, theoretically, based on what we learned in the beginning of the Maimer, what should they have done? Learn Torah. Right? Learn Torah. That's Poda besholom. No, they daven. They said Tehillim. That's Poda b'milchama. No. The Alter Rebbe got out and it was saying the words Poda besholom. He was let out of jail. How does this all work? The inyan shel amiras Tehillim, skip the parentheses. Hu tefillah, second last line. Ubeloshen hakosev, as it says about David HaMelech himself, not im zmires Yisrael, zmires, songs, right? David HaMelech wrote songs. He didn't write Torah, he wrote songs. The zmires shayachim letefillah. The idea of song is relevant to prayer. Ubefrat, particularly. I'm sorry, it does say it in the Maimer. I apologize. And especially based on what's told to us from the stories of our Rebbeim over the years, that the redemption of the Alter Rebbe, Ba al Yadei, is what I said, wasn't in the Maimer, here it is, I'm sorry. Al Yadei HaTfilos, the davening, the Talmidah, the Chasidah, from his students and his Chasidim, and all those who walk in his path. What helped the Alter Rebbe? The davening. Ugeula zu ba'al yedei tefillah. And this redemption came through tefillah. And what do we say about tefillah? The Rebbe's not going to quote what we said about tefillah earlier in the Maimer. Shas tzloisa, shas krova. The time of davening is a time of battle. What's the battle? Your Nefesh Elokis wants to tell God how great He is. Your Nefesh Abamis wants breakfast. And your Nefesh Elokis is trying to get your Nefesh Abamis. It's encountering the Nefesh Abamis directly with no props. There's no other props. It's just the Nefesh Elokis and the Nefesh Abamis battling over the words that are going to come out of my mouth. So the Nefesh Abamis has no problem saying the words. That's okay. Just as long as I don't think about it. Right? To think about what I'm actually saying and to notice the things I'm saying is a battle royal. Okay, that's davening. Davening is a battle. So how can it be that the redemption in peace of the Alter Rebbe was through davening? That's not peace. That's a battle. And the whole situation was a battle. The Alter Rebbe wasn't sitting at a vacation resort on the Black Sea. The Alter Rebbe was in jail in Petersburg, the capital city, and again, the basic idea was that he wasn't going to come back. I mean, that's what the idea was when the Russians took him. They took him in what was called the black carriage, and the black carriage meant this person is not going to jail for a traffic violation. Okay, so
Isn't it their thing that go with Hamanak As Hashem, that whoever says Tehillim is like also studying Torah?
Well, I mean, not it depends. What you could say Tehillim as limud Torah. You could learn Tehillim. Tehillim is part of Torah, so you could learn it. But if you're saying it as davening, you're not davening. You're not learning. You're davening. But hopefully you're thinking about the words. But hopefully you're thinking about the words because you sat down and learned what they meant, what they mean. Right? You want your davening to be better? First things first. This is not anything deep or spiritual. Sit down and learn the meaning of the words that you're saying every day in davening. If you don't know what you're saying, how can you possibly pay attention to it? I'll give you something in French. Read this. It's the same letters we use in English. Read this and tell me what you think. Well, I don't think anything. I don't have a clue what I just said. I mean, I said it with a funny accent. Right? Okay. I pronounced E-T, et, instead of A. Okay. Do you want some wine? I'll give you some good Cabernet Sauvignon. You want some Cabernet Sauvignon? I have some good wine. I have some Merlot also. Some good Merlot. Ooh. Okay. So do you know what Cabernet Sauvignon really means? I don't know what that means. Right? I don't really care to know what it means. But, theoretically, if you want to know what it means, so look it up in the dictionary, right? Okay, you want to know what you're saying in davening? First things first, Perish Amilas. Sit down with the Tehillim and go with English, and you want an English commentary? Fine, do it with an English commentary. Sit down, we have the book in there, there's good books in there. Sit down with an English commentary and go through those parts of Tehillim that you say in davening, and I'm sure that it'll be a richer experience. So you can learn Tehillim, but when we're davening, we're davening. Baba Mirsa Pasuk Poda besholom. This all happened. The freedom happened by saying Poda besholom. Somehow, it can't, not as a result of it. It came while the Rebbe was saying, and that's essentially connected with the whole story. And we sing that niggin non-stop at every Farbrengen, Yud Kislev, Yud Tes Kislev. Because we saw earlier in the Maimon, the Mittel Rebbe was also saying Poda besholom, right? Because that was the Poda besholom is the Tehillim for the 10th day of the month, and he was let out of jail on the 10th day of the month. Again, he wasn't really in jail, the Mittel Rebbe. He was held in captivity and interrogated, right? But he wasn't mamish in jail. The Alter Rebbe was mamish in jail, in a room that had no windows. On the side of the jail, evidently, I've never seen it, but I mean, there are people who have. The building's still there. It's on a river in Petersburg, and there's the bottom of the building is just a wall, and then there's the top of the building, whatever goes on over there, and the cells were in that wall. So they just put you in a cave, no windows. So the Alter Rebbe, what was one of the miracles that happened was the Alter Rebbe knew what time of day it was all day long, so he knew how to daven Shachris, Mincha, Maariv, knew when Shabbos. So when they asked him how he knew that, he said, well, and this is something that predates the Alter Rebbe, he knows about it and is holy enough to actually tap into it. The word Yud Kei Vav Kei, 4 letters. So a 3-letter word has what's called 6 permutations. Aleph, base, gimel, Aleph, gimel, base, Aleph, gimel, base, gimel, Aleph, Gimel Aleph Beis, Gimel Beis Aleph, right? 6 different ways in which you can write those 3 letters, right? A 4-letter root, 24. 1 times 2 times 3 times 4. It's easy math, right? Okay, what if there are 2 letters the same? So then it's 12. So there are 12 different permutations of Yud Kei Vav Kei, which vitalize the 12 hours of the night and the 12 hours of the day. Because we know that we divide the night into 12 equal pieces and the day into 12 equal pieces. Halachic hours are not 60 minutes long, except when the day is equally divided. Halachic hours are 1/12 of dark and 1/12 of light. So in the summer, an hour could be an hour and a half, because there's 18 hours of light, and so 18 divided by 12 is 1.5. Nighttime, each hour could be 45 minutes. Right, or vice versa. Right now, the hours at night are a little longer than the hours of day because there's more night than day. Right? True. That's how it works. We're getting towards the shortest day of the year. We're a month away, something like that, from the shortest day of the year. Meaning the shortest light day of the year. Every day is 24 hours. They're all the same. Okay, so the Alter Rebbe could tell each of those hours is vitalized by a different siruf, a different combination of the letters Yud Kei Vav Kei. And the Alter Rebbe could tell by virtue of the metaphysical energy, the godly energy powering that hour, so then he would know what hour that was. You and I can't do these things. Don't try, right? Don't try at home. It's one of those things. Don't try this at home, right? So he always knew what time it was. He always knew what day it was, right? Okay. They were quite astounded. That's why the ministers started coming to talk to him and visit him. The king himself, the Tsar himself came. The Tsar dressed himself up as a prison guard and he had heard from his ministers how amazing this Jewish prisoner is. So the Tsar himself came to see the Alter Rebbe in jail, dressed himself up as a guard and came in. When he stood up, when he came in, the Alter Rebbe stood up. So why are you standing up? He said, you stand up for a king. So, how do you know I'm a king? So the Alter Rebbe said, someone who's sensitive to the kingship of heaven is sensitive to kingship on earth. So I said, okay, fine. Everything they said about you is right. Right? I just came to see. Said you're a pretty special guy. Special guy. So let me out of here. So he got out by saying Tehillim. Okay, 3rd line down. What's the explanation of all this? The cave and she'esa Torah mitzvahs, that since our involvement in Torah and mitzvahs, and this is what the Rebbe told us at the beginning of the week, that since our involvement in Torah and mitzvahs, in Mesiras Nefesh Mamish, is absolute self-sacrifice and coming from the deepest place in our soul. It goes through a lot of processes to ultimately resonate in my conscious reality, but it's coming from that place in you and I that is essentially connected to the Eibishter, and that place knows nothing but godliness. And every mitzvah you do, every line of Torah you learn, and every mitzvah you do is coming from that place. That's what we learned earlier. Kamuva lil mitanya, as was brought earlier from Tanya, 41st parak. Lochein, therefore, gam tefillah, also tefillah. Keshura im Poda besholom. Tefillah also. Where's your tefillah ultimately coming from? Even though it's expressing itself in a fashion of milchama, once it expresses itself in conscious you, what's the true source of your desire to connect to the Eibishter? Because your essential connection to the Eibishter, and you want to be connected to truth. You don't want to live falsehood, you want to live truth. And what's truth? God. And there's a part of you that's so powerfully connected to that nothing else exists. That's all there is. And that resonates in your conscious reality, and you open up a siddur and you daven. The process might be a battle, but the source of it all is a place of unbelievable shalom, unbelievable peace, just like everything else. Now the Rebbe says it amazingly. The whole thing is amazing, but this is even more astounding. The Yesh Leimer, the Rebbe says again, no footnote, which means it's coming now, it's happening now when the Rebbe is saying this mimer. She'adarabba. Adarabba means on the contrary, au contraire, a contrario. Inyan ha-Mesiras Nefesh hu betfila yosemi b'Torah. The inyan ha-Mesiras Nefesh, meaning the connection to the essence of the soul, which is a place of absolute peace, is more in tefillah than in Torah. So after making the distinction between the milchama of tefillah and the piece of Torah, and then saying no, but really even the milchama is really peace. Now we're saying the milchama is really more peace than the shalom. Why? That which a person's involvement in Torah, mesiras nefesh mamish, is mesiras nefesh, meaning it's an expression of the deepest aspect of his essential connection to Kadosh Baruch Hu. And he should hopefully is aware of that when he's learning Torah. So the Rebbe says something very interesting though. This sensitivity to mesiras nefesh. When should a person be aware of such mesiras nefesh? Sarich liyos must be kodim sheyascha limud. Before he sits down to learn, before he opens up the book, what should he remind himself of? I'm now going to enter into the most powerful unity with God that can be experienced in the physical world. It's called learning Torah. And this is coming from the intense desire of the essence of my soul to be, it is connected to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, but to express that connection. When do you think that? When do you read the fifth parak of Tanya to appreciate what learning Torah is really all about before you start learning? But when you're learning the Gemara, what are you doing? Looking in the fifth parak of Tanya? You're not learning the fifth parak of Tanya. You're learning the Gemara. Ukishaloimed harbe shas. When a person learns harbe shas ritzufes, a number of hours consecutively, what might be a good idea to do in the middle? Because you might get up to get a cup of tea, you might get up to get a cup of coffee. Okay, what else might you do? Remind yourself of what learning Torah is really all about. Why do I have to remind myself? Because the Rebbe is going to discuss. When you're sitting and learning the Torah, what are you aware of? Your own intellect. It's you and the Torah. As a matter of fact, famous Chassidish Rebbe said, there are times when a person has to forget about God. When does he forget about God? 2 times. When he's learning Torah. He didn't mean you forget about God when you're learning Torah. What did he mean? When you're learning Torah, what do you have to do? You have to get your intellect to understand the Torah. Don't say, God, please help me understand this. Understand it. You. Figure it out. Right? And when you hear about the pain of another Jew, you have to forget about God. Well, you forget about God. You say, don't say God will help him. You help him. Forget about God. Go help him. Whoa. Now, this is someone who never, ever, ever spent a moment of his life without a deep consciousness of godliness. But what did he mean? He meant in terms of what you're doing. When you're sitting and learning Torah, what are you doing? Don't sit there and say Tehillim that the Eibusher says help you figure out the Gemara. Read the Gemara again. You didn't understand the line? Read it again. Break your head. Get blisters on your brain trying to figure out what this Gemara means. It's you and the Gemara. Forget about God. The sons of Rav. Forget about God when you're learning Torah. Don't chas v'shalom forget about God. Right? But you understand what he means. Someone who really thinks about God can say that. People who don't really think about God have to be careful if they say forget about God, because when they forget about God, they really forget about God. Right? Okay, he never did. Okay, but when you're sitting and learning a piece of Gemara, what do you do? It's your intellect, conscious you, and that page of Gemara. That's what's happening right there. And you have to make sure that conscious you knows how to do this. It's not some ethereal, mystical experience. It's your intellect learning how to read words so that you can connect to God through those words. Hard work. And if I don't do the work, it's not going to happen. I say Tehillim a lot. Tehillim. Saying Tehillim is great, but it's not going to help you learn a page of Gemara. When is it that you experience that mesiras nefesh and think about that mesiras nefesh? The Rebbe says, "Kodim sheyascha lilmod," before he learns. And when he learns a lot of hours, yesh lo lizbenim b'zeh b'chol shah v'shah. He should think about this hourly. Hourly doesn't necessarily mean 60 minutes. Meaning now and then, this is again, Tanya Perik Me'amalach. Now and then, what should he do? He should remind himself what it means to learn Torah. Why do I have to remind myself? I'm learning Torah. Because I can get so into the intellect of the Torah that I can forget about the God of the Torah. Right? Now, we happened in the sugyas that we're learning right now, which the guys in the shir are finding very difficult. What are we spending most of our time doing? Trying to figure out Pshat and Psukim. Right? Okay, so you're finding this very difficult. How Chazal learn Psukim. Okay, it's difficult. You just have to learn how to do it. It's like anything else. Okay. But most pages of Gemara, what book do you not look in at any point? Tanakh. Right? Why? Gemara's not quoting Tanakh. It's trying to figure out Pshat in the Mishnah. Right? Is God's name mentioned? Might go 4 or 5 pages. No mention of one verse from the Torah or God. Just cows, sheep, broken fences, armed robbers, all sorts of wild stuff. What is it, Bepnimius? It's all the Eibishter. It's the most powerful unity with God that you can possibly experience, because you're reading God's intellect, and where does your intellect stop and God's begin? It doesn't. It just becomes one intellect. You're reading God's mind, so to speak. The Eibishter's thinking about this, and you're thinking about it. So where does his thought stop and yours begin? It doesn't. It's just one. That's what the Rebbe explains in the 5th parak in Tanya. It's amazing. Okay, but what's the actual topic? The most mundane stuff imaginable, and a lot of people never get it. They never figure it out. They can never ever get past the fact that they just like, what do I care about this? Well, maybe you should ask, what do you mean, what do I care? What do you care that you don't care? God cares, so get into it and figure it out. God cares about this ox goring that cow. And maybe what God cares about is more important than what I care about, because I want to hear deep ideas about the metaphysical reality of my life. Okay, you can learn some chassidus. Learn a couple hours before davening, a couple hours late at night, no problem. But during the day, in the yeshiva that the Lubavitcher Rebbeim created, what do guys spend most of their time doing? Figuring out what God wants to think about. What does he want to think about? I don't know. He likes thinking about oxen goring cows. I don't know. He's into oxen goring cows. Why is he into oxen goring cows? I don't care. He is, and he's big, and I'm little, and I want to know what big things are about, and what's the biggest thing you get. Oxen goring cows. There's other stuff too. There's stuff in Chassidus that'll blow your mind. But even Chassidus, theoretically, a person could just get into the whole intellect of it and forget about the fact that you're talking about God. Harder to do in Chassidus. Rabbi Steinsaltz, all of besholom, who was a brilliant man and an amazing person and incredibly creative in all ways, right? So he, every now and then he would say like these little jewels that no one else had ever said, because he was a very unique, creative sort of thinker. So when he'd forbring, sometimes his forbringings were just terrible. So he'd sit there like, when is he going to say anything? Because he was just sort of thinking about it, it didn't work. Sometimes his forbringings would push it unbelievable, because he would just go onto some idea and he'd talk about it in the most interesting and creative and unusual way. It's wow. So he once said an amazing line. Someone who learns Gemara, and that's what the Rebbe is talking about right now, this story is completely and totally connected to the Maimer, the lines we're learning. Someone who learns Gemara and gets a little too impressed with his intellectual ability to understand it, right? He sort of forgets about the God of it and gets into his own intellect of it, and he's very impressed at how smart he is at understanding it. He's like a pregnant woman. She's a little bigger than she should be, but it's explainable. We can explain why this might happen, right? Because the nature of and that's what I was talking about. When do you think about the Eibishter and the Mesiras Nefesh? Before you're learning, but when you're learning, the Rebbe is about to say you're completely focused on the learning. Okay. So he said, someone who sits and learns Chassidus and becomes a little too impressed by his own understanding of the deep ideas of Chassidus and is very impressed and loves to, show off how much he knows in Chassidus. It's like a pregnant man. He's bigger than he should be, and there's absolutely no explanation whatsoever. Now, he said this before, there were idiots in the world who think men can get pregnant, but okay, Beseder, he was talking about the healthy people. Okay, let's finish the paragraph in this time. And then we will finish the Maimer on Sunday. I will give you 2 things on Sunday. I hope. With the help of you, gives memory to humans. I'm going to give you a short question sheet on this Maimer, which you should be able to answer. And I was thinking we might even do it together, right? Though part of me would like you to do it. We learned the Maimer, you should know what it says. Simple questions, nothing tricky, right? And also a synopsis of the Maimer. ois bias. In English. Okay? And if I don't give them to you on Sunday, I'll give them to you on Monday because you remind me on Sunday. They're in my piece of plastic here, this thing. They're in there. It's just, I can't get them out at 7:15 in the morning because we don't have a printer downstairs. If we had a printer downstairs, I could print it downstairs and give it to you. I have to remember it at home and bring it here because I have hard copies at home. Okay, let's finish the paragraph. So when a person learns out in 4 lines up in the brackets, when a person learns hour after hour, so what might he want to do at some point in the middle? Stop. And what's something that actually people do? Read the 5th parak of Tanya to yourself quickly. Remind yourself what it means to learn Torah. You're getting a little tired and you're wondering, why am I doing this? Like, why am I worried? What do you do if pestilence comes to the city? I go inside, I go outside, what do I care? Right? Well, then read that little piece in the 5th parak in Tanya, and it'll tell you what's happening when you're sitting and learning that, and you go, wow, this is the coolest thing I've ever done in my life, and you might go back to it with a little more energy. But the Rebbe says something very interesting. Aval be'esa limud, 3 lines up, when they're actually learning, kishu oisek b'havanas v'hasagas ha'inyan shalomed, when he's involved in the intellectual understanding and comprehension of this idea that he's learning, ain't a margish a bittul de Mesiras Nefesh. He doesn't experience the bittul of Mesiras Nefesh. He doesn't relate to his self-sacrifice. He relates to the power of his own intellect. Right? And sometimes there are many times when we actually understand what we're learning. We go, oh, wow, Baruch Hashem. And he might even be proud of himself, and not in a bad way. Well, Baruch Hashem, I couldn't do this a month ago, and I can do it now. Good for you. Kol hakavod. Well done. And he might even think, hey, I'm a black guy, and give 5 to this chavrusa. Right now, the white guys do what the black guys used to do, because we're all cool. They teach us what cool is, and then the white guys start doing it. But they're onto something new. By the time the white guys are going like this, the black guys are doing something else. Right? I've said that before, but that's just the way it is. Right? Somehow cool, they define what cool is, and the white guys pick it up like sheep to the slaughter. Oh, hey, man. Hey, bro. Hey, bro. A bunch of white guys calling each other bro. Hey, bro. 18-year-old Jewish kids. Hey, bro. Yeah, right. They grew up in the suburbs. Right? Hey, bro. Whatever. It's just the way it is. Right? Okay, so guys, you can even see chavrusas in Harzal. You do not see this in most Bate Midrashas in the world, right? But you'll see it in some, and usually, who is it? And Baruch Hashem, because they're the sweetest people on earth, Balei Tshuva, when they're sitting and learning Gemara, every now and then they'll look at their chavrusa, they'll give them a high five when they understood what's on the page. They don't do that in Panovich, and in Mir, and in 770, right? It doesn't happen. Okay, Beseder, but in Mayanot it does, that's okay. I'm sure it does in Or Sameach and in Eshet Torah, and also that's good, hey, but, they should really hold a football next to the thing when they take the football and slam it down when they get shot, You're not allowed to get a first down anymore. It's like you get a first down, it's when you won the Super Bowl. It's like a big celebration to get a first down. I remember watching, I was talking about this with Dr. November, watching a clip of Sandy Koufax pitching a 2-hit shutout in the 7th game of the 1965 World Series. Why is that an important year? That's the year he didn't pitch Yom Kippur, the first day. We as kids, were we excited about that. That was like the biggest thing in the world. Sandy Koufax did. It was the front page of every newspaper in America. Koufax doesn't pitch first game, it's Yom Kippur. Right? Wow, what a Kiddush Hashem. The guy was amazing. So now he ended up pitching the 7th game, but on less rest, all that stuff. They talk about baseball pitchers with their rest. Right? Because he should have pitched 1-4-7, but he pitched 2-5-7. Okay. It's a great story. I have to tell you the story because it's a great story of Americana. The guy who did pitch was the second in the first game that Koufax should have pitched, was the best pitcher in baseball. Second best pitcher in baseball. Koufax was the best and he was the second best. And he pitched the first game and got slaughtered. And the manager had to come take him out after like 3-4 innings. He was just a disaster. So when the manager came to get him, he said to the manager, I'll bet you wish I was Jewish also, huh? That's what he said there. Like, too bad I I shouldn't be around. I messed up big. Okay, very interesting. After they won, they just won the whole championship. He walks off the mound. His catcher walks. They shake hands, like adults. They shake hands. All the players come and they're all shaking hands and walking off the field like adults would if they heard some good news, as opposed to 8-year-olds hearing that they're going on holiday and they're all jumping up and down and no, just they're shaking hands. What happened? The world changed. Okay, let's finish. What's he feeling? He's feeling his own intellect, not in a bad way. He has to use his intellect. The opposite is true. Man Malka, who's the king? Rabbanan. Meaning there's a sense of upliftedness, of greatness. The amazing Gemara. The Gemara says that if a scholar might express some anger, which he shouldn't, but if his anger is expressed in the middle of learning Torah, so then the Gemara actually says, it's his Torah that's expressing the anger, meaning he's so involved in learning Torah now, he doesn't have the patience for something else. Whoa. Now really he should. But the learning of Torah is such an intense experience of his own intellect trying to figure something out, he might get a little too much into that. Mashenk ain't tefillah. It's not the case of tefillah. Tefillah is not that at all. Tefillah isn't about me. What's tefillah about? What's tefillah is like a servant standing in front of his master. Tachlis a bittul, the ultimate bittul, the ultimate self-nullification, bittul the Mesiras Nefesh, which is the bittul the Mesiras Nefesh. And that's tefillah. So not only now, we've gone complete circle. Tefillah, which was the milchama, has become the ultimate expression of the Mesiras Nefesh, which is really the ultimate expression of shalom. Because it's so obviously the act of tefillah itself is an expression of Mesiras Nefesh, and that's certainly true. What do I have to do when I'm davening? If I can be successful at it, what do I have to do? I have to move myself out of the way. I have to think about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as opposed to think about myself. And if someone says to you, and we understand why people say this, and it doesn't mean they're terrible, terrible people, but I mean, it's just, we'd like to try to understand it also on a deeper level. Someone says, I had really great kavanah when I davened today. Well, I guess not. Because what was I thinking about? I'm really paying attention. Well, I guess I'm not. Because, when you have a conversation with a person, you say, I really said that well. Well, that's a very bizarre thing to say, right? In a conversation, I really said, hi Menachem, I really said that hi Menachem well. I really said it with the right inflection, and it's like I really meant hi Menachem. If you think that when you're talking to another person, then you're not talking to that other person, you're just talking to a mirror. Just the person, what you're seeing in the mirror is the other person, but you're just talking to yourself. I said that well. So I really davened. I really had kavanah in davening today. Well, what does that mean? If I really have kavanah in davening, I'm not even aware of the fact that I'm davening. I'm just thinking about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, not that it can't be that there are days when we appreciate the fact that we were paying a little more attention to what we're saying, but even that is still me paying attention to the fact that I'm paying attention. I'd like to get to the point where I'm not even worried. I don't even think about paying attention because that's just what happens. Okay, that's a serious place to get to, but and that doesn't mean that steps along the way aren't real steps, but I do have to be sort of honest with myself and say, I really paid attention to what I was saying today. Well, sort of. If I'm aware of the fact that I'm paying attention to me paying attention as much as I'm paying attention to the words I'm saying. Maybe I don't want to pay attention to me paying attention. Maybe I just want to say the words, like we would in a conversation with someone else. Okay. So, we will finish the mimer Bezrat Hashem Sunday morning. Al